Can you talk a little bit for the
Sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hello, hello. We're going to speak about Jodorowsky's Dune. We're sitting here in Paris. It's a little bit chilly in this room, but it's also kind of nice.
Be prepared to live the most wonderful experience of your life.
I wanted to make something sacred, free, with new perspective, open the mind. I start the fight to make Dune. You need to create another world, the optical world. Iba a cambiar la mentalidad del público.
You know, Jodorowsky's Dune is my first real film, first big film, first film that you can see in a theater, that's for sure. Many years ago I made a documentary about a music scene in New York called New York Hardcore, so kind of like punk rock, but a little bit different. So I made a documentary about that back in the late 1990s. So between that, up until Jodorowsky's Dune, I was sort of, worked a little bit in television, tried to make a couple of films here and there, which was not terribly successful. So it's kind of like, it's almost like my career, I hope, is beginning with Jodorowsky's Dune, I guess. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of, it's not a well-known story, but it exists. There's a bunch of books of like, the 50 greatest movies never made, all kinds of stuff like that. And this is always one of those movies listed. And this is always the most interesting one out of all of them. This is always the most interesting what if. What would the world be like if this movie had been made? And so it's always been just intriguing. I mean, if you are familiar with Alejandro's films, and then you learn that the guy that made El Topo and Holy Mountain was going to make Dune in the 70s with this cast of Orson Welles and Salvador Dali and Pink Floyd doing the music. I mean, it's kind of an irresistible story that you want to learn more about. And I wanted to learn more about it, so I said I have to tell the story. I have to contact these people. I have to contact Alejandro, Michel Sardou, and speak to them and try to share the story with the world. I think I was just lucky that I got to be the first person to tell this story. And maybe this story could not have been told sooner. Maybe Alejandro wasn't ready to tell the story. Maybe Michel Sardou wasn't ready. Maybe it took almost 40 years for them to be able to tell the story. Maybe 20 years ago was a different, they were of a different mindset, I think, about it. And I think it took, Alejandro looks at his experiences with Jodorowsky, with trying to make Dune now as being something positive. Even though the film didn't happen, he still has a very positive view of it. But I'm sure that took a lot of years to get to, you know what I mean?
I need to find the warriors. I need 3,000 drawings, point of view, movement of the camera, dialogue. I used Moebius like a camera. He was very quick. It was superhuman.
You always have to think, like, did the Orson Welles story happen like that? Sometimes he would tell a crazy story. He would tell us the story about meeting with Pink Floyd. And he goes into Pink Floyd, goes in to meet with them, and they're all eating hamburgers. And he's offended. Like, how can you be eating hamburgers when I want to speak to you? And he wants to leave. And then they tell him, come back, and then they sit down, and everything's fine. And you hear that story, and maybe you go, oh, okay, really? That really happened? And then we did an interview with the co-producer, with Jean-Paul Gibbon. He told exactly the same story. So just when you think Alejandro is lying, somebody comes along and verifies it. Same thing with the Dali stories. Everything that Jodorowsky said about all the things that happened with Dali, Michel Sardou said, yes, absolutely, I was there, this happened. So I think that there's a lot more truth than maybe people would imagine with these crazy stories. had his film been made, it would be a film, and maybe it wouldn't be bigger than that. But the fact that it was not made, it becomes huge. It becomes as big as the universe. You know, when those ideas travel out into the world, into the universe, and other people see those ideas, they hear about them, they incorporate those things into their own work. It inspires them to create new things. I mean, that's the ultimate power. So maybe, I keep thinking that maybe this film, that Alejandro's version of Dune, was always meant to be just like this. Because if you think about it, it's not a failure. You know, he never failed, because everything that he did was successful. You know, he got his team together, they did all the creation, they did all the artwork, they did all of that work, they put it all into that book, they gave it to the studios, and then the studios in Hollywood said, no, thank you. But they never, if they started to film the movie, and after a week or 2 weeks it was shut down, that would be a failure. Because then there would be a couple of days worth of footage that you can't do anything with, and that would be a failure. But the fact that they never turned on the camera, maybe it means they were never supposed to. So maybe it'll always be perfect in being that complete version. Because if you ask Alejandro, he doesn't say, if I made Dune, he says, when I made it. Because he thinks that he made it. He said, look, I did all the work. I made the movie, it's here. You want to see it? Open the book. So it's kind of an interesting, different way to think about it, you know, that he taught me anyway.
I went to search Giger. He make the monster of Alien. The castle. Open the mouth, a tongue go there, out, the spaceship came in the tongue.
I read Frank Herbert's Dune, but by accident, I sort of approached it the way Alejandro did. Because Alejandro, somebody told him, hey, there's this good book named Dune, you know, you should check it out. And so he decided to make the movie before he ever read it. Once Michel Sardou said, yes, let's go make it, then he read the book, and then he wrote the script based on it. And it was the same thing with me. I contacted Alejandro. I said, I'd like to make this into a documentary. And once he said yes, then I read the book. I actually read the book on the plane flying to Paris to start shooting. So I kind of waited until the last minute, kind of like he did. But I think it was kind of by accident, which is interesting. Even in the documentary, you know, Alejandro explains the final scene in his film, which was going to be that the main character gets killed, and all the people, every other person in the film starts speaking in the voice of that character. And that character's name is Paul. And once he gets killed, everybody starts saying in his voice, I am Paul, I am Paul, I am Paul. So it's like the whole planet takes on the consciousness of that character. And then this entire planet, which is a desert, the whole planet is a desert. Once this character is killed, the whole planet awakens, according to Alejandro. And from the desert, you get rivers, you get seas, you get trees and grass and animals. Everything comes to life. And then the planet goes through the universe and spreads the consciousness to people. But that's not how the book ends. The book ends, it just kind of continues. There's many Dune books. There's 15 or 20 of them, I think, at this point. So he really changed the book. So I think if there's anybody who's really a fan of the novel, they probably would not have appreciated all of the changes that Alejandro did. But Alejandro, I think he read Dune and he took inspiration from it, and he made his Dune. I mean, even the documentary is called Jodorowsky's Dune, because it's really him taking that story and making his own complete versions. I think if he made the film, and if you compared it to the book, I think you would see two completely different things, which really couldn't be compared, I think. I imagine, anyway.
Alejandro is a bit like a dictator or a cult leader in assembling his army around him, and
David Carradine, Mick Jagger, Pink Floyd, Orson Welles, Dali as the Mad Emperor of the Galaxy.
Ce storyboard, il a circulé dans les couloirs d'Hollywood. Je peux pas imaginer sans.
We will change the world!
As we were making the movie, I always thought Mobius would be interviewed. That was always, of course, how could you not interview Mobius? Of course. But once we started filming, he was very sick. You know, he had cancer and he was suffering, I think, for a long time. So as far as I understand, he didn't really want to be on camera. He didn't want to be shown like that. And in the middle of filming, he passed away. And at one point, I was worried because I said, okay, what happens when we finish the film and he's not in the film? What are people going to say? Are they going to say, ooh, something's wrong with the film, there's something missing? But I have to say that nobody has ever had a problem with him not being in the film. And I think the reason is because he is in the film. You know, everybody's speaking about him. His artwork is in the film, and his artwork is him. So I think he's so represented in the film that I don't think anything is missing because he's in it. But I really thought when the film premiered at Cannes, you know, years ago, 2013, I really thought that, you know, when people do the questions afterwards, I was ready for somebody to say, you know, what happened to Mobius? How come he's not in it? But it never, sometimes people think about it, but it never crosses their mind that that's something that the film is missing. You know what I mean? So we were really lucky because I do believe that he is in the film because his work is in there and everybody speaks so highly of him. Alejandro and Chris Voss and Giger, everybody only has great things to say about him, which is a great thing, I think, to add to Mobius's legacy, which is important. I think a lot of people have approached Alejandro to make the film, you know, to animate it or to make it for real. Because he even says in the movie, like, the movie's done. Here's all the artwork. Some other director can come and take it and make it. But I don't know. I mean, Dune has been already made a couple of times. You know, it was made by David Lynch, and then in maybe the year 2000, I think.
It's a TV version.
Yeah, there was a TV version made, so it's been told already twice. And then a couple of years ago, they tried to make it again, and Peter Berg tried to direct it, and then Pierre Morel tried to direct it. So people are still come back to Dune, not even Jodorowsky's Dune, but Dune itself. So there's always kind of interest in it. But whether, I mean, I think that Jodorowsky's artwork exists. I think that version of the film exists. But if anyone else were to make it, it wouldn't be the same. You know, it wouldn't be Alejandro making it, and it wouldn't be Alejandro making it in 1976 with that cast, with the world the way it was. You know, now it's, I think the movies of big budget science fiction are kind of polluted with all these superhero movies and sort of sequel after sequel after sequel after sequel, and that's not what Alejandro was interested in. So that's a good question. I don't know. What if someone came along today and made it? I don't know if it could be done. I don't know. But it's interesting to think about and to wonder if somebody ever would, you know.
Dune is probably the greatest movie never made. It continues to influence us despite the fact that it doesn't exist. We cannot rent it, we cannot watch it.
Jamais dans l'histoire, un film aura été aussi avancé pour ne pas devenir un film.
And I'm going to tell you something, it's awesome.
It's enormous.
Bigger than 2001. Could be fantastic, no?
It changed my view of, you know, of filmmaking and of the world. It changed my opportunities, for sure. Before I made this documentary, I really hadn't made too much. And I sort of came to Alejandro's house and essentially asked to speak with him without anything behind me, you know. And he trusted me and let me make it. And he gave me this amazing gift of this story and let me tell it. And now that this film is complete and now it's out in the world and in cinemas and in film festivals, that alone, that process, the things I learned while making it, have changed me forever. And just the opportunity to speak with Alejandro as often as I do has changed my worldview. I mean, he has power to change people. That's what he said he wanted from the movie. He wanted a movie that would change the world, change the mind of everybody who came to see it. And it certainly changed changed my world. And it's interesting the lessons you learn, you know, from him, such as, you know, the overall theme, I think, of our story is that what some people may see as a failure is not necessarily a failure. Maybe the greatest failure is actually the greatest success in the end, depending on how you look at it. You could just give up and say, well, it's over. But he didn't give up, and he took those ideas and he made them into something else. And he kept working with them, and he kept working with them, and he put those ideas into comics. He put those ideas into other films, into books. And I think that's really the most valuable lesson that I got from it. Is that no does not mean no. Sometimes no means you just have to change your course of action.
You can hear in some films, I'm Dune, I'm Dune, I'm Dune.